Right now, a company you have literally never heard of might be legally selling a psychological profile based entirely on your late night internet habits.
Yeah.
And depending on whether your IP address traces back to, say, Texas or California, stopping them from doing it is either just a simple click of a button or it's practically impossible.
It's a completely fractured landscape right now.
Right.
We are dealing with this entirely invisible, highly lucrative marketplace that basically operated in the shadows for over a decade,
Hmm.
and now states are scrambling to regulate it using entirely different rule books.
Which brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. So, we're analyzing a pretty massive legal comparison chart and compliance notes.
Very massive, yeah.
Right, and this was updated as of June 2026. The author is David M. Staus of Staus Privacy AI Cyber,
Yep.
and the focus here is on how 6 specific states, so that's California, Connecticut, Nevada, Oregon, Texas, and Vermont, how they are attempting to basically rein in the world of data brokers. And our goal today is to give you, the listener, a shortcut to understanding who is hoarding your digital footprint, what rights you actually have to reclaim it, and the radically different ways states are punishing the companies that break these rules.
And honestly, the contrast in those punishments is jarring.
Yeah.
I mean, you have some jurisdictions treating massive data violations as a mild, administrative oversight.
Like a slap on the wrist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And others are dropping the regulatory hammer so hard it could bankrupt a company in weeks.
It's wild. And because navigating the reality of your digital footprint can feel super overwhelming, keeping a companion resource handy is just essential.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I frequently rely on one of our sponsors, www.myprivacy.blog, to stay updated on how these invisible marketplaces sort of intersect with our daily lives.
That's a great resource.
It really is. It's a great tool to keep open while we untangle this web today. So let's start right at the foundation. Before we even analyze the fines, we need to understand the players. Like, how is the law actually separating a standard everyday business from a regulated data broker?
Well, that is the dividing line, right? And states approach it very differently. So California and Vermont, for instance, they anchor their entire definition on this concept of a direct relationship.
Okay, a direct relationship.
Right. So in those states, a data broker is a business that knowingly collects and sells consumer data to third parties without having a direct relationship with the consumer they are profiling.
Okay, let's elevate that concept beyond just, basic e-commerce, because the internet is fundamentally built on hidden third parties.
True.
Like if I am reading an article on a major news website, I have a direct relationship with that publisher.
Right.
But that publisher site is usually embedded with dozens of invisible ad trackers, right? And analytics pixels that are gathering my browsing data.
Yeah.
Does the law consider those hidden trackers to be brokers?
So legally, a direct relationship is defined by strict boundaries surrounding consumer intent.
Intent. Okay.
Yeah, intent is key. You, the consumer, must intentionally interact with a business for the purpose of accessing or using their specific product.
Meaning I intended to read the news article.
Exactly. You intended to read the article, but you did not intend to interact with the hidden ad tracker scraping your IP address.
I see.
Therefore, the ad tracker lacks a direct relationship. That classifies them as a third party and potentially a data broker if they turn around and sell that data.
Wow, okay. What about white-labeled services?
Okay, like that.
Say I buy coffee beans from an independent restaurant online, right? But their checkout process is actually powered by some massive third-party payment processor.
Right, very common.
Yeah, so I never intentionally went to the payment processor's website, but they are holding my credit card info.
So that introduces the service provider exemption.
Okay.
If that payment processor is strictly processing the transaction on behalf of the roaster, and using the data solely for that purpose, they are a service provider. They're not a broker.
So they're safe.
Yes, until they aren't. They cross the line into data brokering the exact moment they take your transaction history and sell it to a separate marketing firm to monetize your affinity for, expensive coffee.
Got it.
The data has to be sold or traded for their own independent commercial benefit to trigger the broker label.
Okay, there is an interesting loophole I kind of want to test here, though.
Sure, go for it.
Let's say I find out one of these shadow brokers actually has my profile.
Okay.
And I send them an email explicitly demanding that they delete my information. Doesn't that act of communication technically create a direct relationship.
Like you're reaching out to them.
Right. I am intentionally interacting with them at that point.
It's a clever thought, but the drafters of the legislation actually anticipated that exact defense.
Really?
Yeah. The laws in California and Vermont explicitly state that a consumer verifying their identity or exercising a privacy right does not legally constitute a direct relationship.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because if it did, the very mechanism of protecting your privacy would just grant the broker a perpetual license to keep selling your information.
Right, it would totally backfire. It essentially prevents them from weaponizing your opt-out request.
Precisely.
But this direct relationship test isn't universal, is it? Looking at the Staus notes, it looks like Texas and Nevada completely discard the relationship concept in their definitions.
They do. They approach the definition entirely through the lens of business model and scale.
How so?
Well, Nevada zeroes in on the primary function of the company. You are only a data broker in Nevada if your primary business is purchasing covered information online about consumers and then selling it.
Wait, primary business?
Yeah. So if data sales are just like a highly lucrative side hustle for a primary retail business, Nevada's broker law might not even trigger.
That feels like a massive gap.
It's a totally different philosophy, and then Texas seems to take a strictly quantitative approach.
Right. The chart shows some hard numerical thresholds for Texas.
Exactly. Texas law applies only if a business derives more than 50% of its revenue from processing or transferring third-party personal data. Or if they derive revenue from processing the data of more than 50,000 individuals that they didn't collect from directly.
Okay, setting a threshold of 50,000 individuals seems incredibly low for internet scale.
It is very low.
Right, like a moderately successful regional app could easily process 50,000 records, but the 50% revenue rule is fascinating.
It really changes the scope.
Because a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate could sell the data of literally millions of people, but if that sale only constitutes, say, 5% of their total global revenue, they dodge the Texas data broker classification entirely.
That is the precise friction point between the state philosophies.
Wow.
Texas is targeting entities where data brokering is the core economic engine, while California and Vermont, they're targeting the act of selling third-party data, regardless of whether it's the company's main revenue stream or just a side project.
Which naturally leads us to the product itself.
The data.
Right. Once a company actually meets these very definitions, what exactly is the regulated personal data that they are trading?
That gets complicated fast.
I bet. Because keeping track of these definitions across state lines is just a logistical nightmare, which is exactly why utilizing tools from our other sponsor, www.compliancehub.wiki, is highly recommended to make sense of this legal maze.
Definitely a good idea to have a guide for this.
Yeah. So when we talk about personal data, are we just dealing with basic identifiers like email addresses, or are we getting into the deeply invasive territory?
So based on the source material, you can really divide the states into two distinct regulatory philosophies.
Okay.
You have the specific lists and you have the broad nets.
Let's start with the specific ones.
Sure. Connecticut, Oregon, and Nevada take the specific approach. They regulate explicit, itemized, computerized data elements.
I imagine that includes the usual suspects, right? Like social security numbers, driver's licenses, financial account numbers.
It does, but it also extends to biometric data. Yeah, Connecticut and Oregon explicitly include elements like retina scans, fingerprints, or voice prints used to authenticate identity.
That's pretty sensitive.
Very. However, Nevada narrows its focus even further. They only regulate personally identifiable information if it was collected by an operator through an internet website or online service.
Wait, really? So if the data was just scraped from offline public records?
Exactly. If it's offline, Nevada's specific digital broker law might not even cover it.
That feels like a very, I don't know, Web 1.0 approach to privacy.
Yeah, it is.
Just making a checklist of sensitive numbers. The broad nets approach seems much more aligned with how modern data is weaponized. Walk me through California and Vermont.
Well, California's definition is expansively drafted. It covers basically anything that relates to, describes, or could reasonably be linked to a particular consumer or a household.
Okay, stop right there. Including a household is a massive distinction.
It really is.
Because that means my smart TV viewing habits, cross-referenced with my partner's mobile location data and like my kids' tablet usage, all of that merges into a single regulated data profile.
Yes, the aggregation is exactly the point. California regulates commercial purchasing histories, precise geolocation, internet search history, and even sensory data.
Sensory data.
Like what? Audio, visual, thermal and olfactory information.
Wait, olfactory? They are regulating data on
I
smells.
know it sounds sci-fi, but yes.
Yeah.
But honestly, the most revealing inclusion in the California framework is the regulation of inferences.
Let's break down the mechanics of an inference, because that sounds like a company isn't just selling what I did, they are selling who they think I am.
That is exactly what data triangulation achieves.
Okay.
Because brokers rarely sell raw data points anymore.
Sure.
Raw data is cheap. Insight is expensive.
That makes sense.
So a broker will take your GPS pings, right? They'll layer them over a map of specialty medical clinics. Then they cross-reference that with your credit card purchases at a nearby pharmacy and factor in your late-night search history for, say, holistic remedies.
Wow, right.
They aren't selling a list of your locations. They are drawing an inference to create a profile that says you likely suffer from a specific chronic illness.
That is incredibly invasive.
It is. And California explicitly regulates data that reflects your psychological trends, predispositions, behavior, and vulnerabilities.
So a generated psychological profile, like a derived assumption about my health or my anxiety levels, is treated with the exact same regulatory weight as my physical home address.
In California, yes, absolutely.
What about Vermont?
Vermont takes a similarly broad stance. They define brokered personal information to include derived data and unique identifiers linkable to a device.
So devices, too.
Right. If your smart fridge or your wearable fitness tracker is generating unique identifiers, Vermont considers that regulated data.
Are there any carve-outs for businesses? I mean, it seems impossible for a company to operate if literally every derived data point is heavily regulated.
So Texas provides a really stark contrast here regarding exemptions. Texas explicitly exempts publicly available information and employee data from its definition.
Okay.
If a broker scrapes your professional history, salary estimates, and job titles from a public networking site, Texas does not consider that regulated personal data.
But California takes the opposite approach, right? The notes indicate California explicitly includes professional and employment-related information within its protective net.
Yes, they do.
So a broker packaging and selling my career history is regulated if I live in Los Angeles, but entirely free to operate if I'm in Houston.
That is the reality of the patchwork. It depends entirely on where you live.
Okay, so knowing that these entities are holding massive databases of biometric scans and AI-generated psychological profiles, what are the actual security requirements?
That's the next big piece.
Right, because it is one thing to define the data, it is another thing entirely to force companies to protect it.
Right. Well, Texas and Vermont mandate that data brokers establish and maintain comprehensive information security programs.
Meaning what, exactly?
This isn't just a suggestion to use strong passwords.
I'm
Legally, this requires administrative, technical, and physical safeguards that are appropriate to the volume and sensitivity of the data.
Okay. And if they fail and they get breached anyway?
Oregon has instituted a strict 45-day notification window.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if a breach occurs, the state director must be notified within 45 days. Vermont also maintains separate, highly specific security breach notification obligations for brokers.
Look, security mandates are necessary, obviously, but they don't solve the core issue for me.
Which is?
I don't just want my psychological profile stored securely on some broker server. I want the ability to compel them to delete it entirely.
Oh, absolutely.
But if I don't have a direct relationship with these hundreds of hidden companies, how do I even find them to submit a deletion request?
This is where the regulatory landscape is shifting dramatically right now.
Okay.
Through the introduction of drop,
P.
delete request, and opt-out platform.
Ugh. I have actually seen this compared to the National Do Not Call Registry for telemarketers.
It's a common comparison.
But we all know the Do Not Call Registry is largely ineffective today because enforcement is super wint and offshore operations just ignore it completely. How is this DDoS mechanism engineered to be any different?
The mechanism relies on centralization and, crucially, forced compliance audits.
Okay, explain that.
Starting August 1, 2026, California is forcing all registered data brokers to integrate with a single centralized DDoS platform. As a consumer, you authenticate yourself once on this state-run platform and just hit a universal delete button.
Wait, but how does the platform route my request without essentially handing a master list of my verified identity to every single broker in the state?
That's a great question.
Doesn't centralizing this create a massive honeypot of consumer data for hackers?
The technical implementation actually relies on encrypted hashing.
Okay, I'm with you.
When you submit a request, P sends a cryptographic hash of your identifiers to the brokers.
So it's scrambled.
Basically, yes. The brokers then check their internal databases. If they have a matching hash, they are legally required to delete the associated profile. They don't ever gain new readable data from the state.
That's smart. And Connecticut is launching their own version of this.
Yes, Connecticut is mandating their drop heap processing by October 1st, 2028.
Wow.
But to your earlier point about the failure of the Do Not Call registry, California and Connecticut both recognize that a rule without verification is totally useless.
Right.
Therefore, they mandate independent third-party audits. California requires brokers to undergo these audits by July 2028, and Connecticut by July 2031, strictly to prove they are actively processing the DDROP requests.
Which brings us to arguably the most critical element of this entire state's comparison chart.
The money.
The money. An audit only matters if the penalty for failing it is actually severe.
Okay.
If a broker ignores the DRI platform, or they fail to register, or they suffer a breach due to basic negligence, what is the actual threat to their bottom line?
The enforcement penalties are where the state philosophies completely radically diverge. We can pretty much segment the country into the capped states, the uncapped states, and the Vermont extreme.
All right, let's analyze the capped states first. Because capping a penalty for a multi-million-dollar data enterprise seems completely counterintuitive to enforcement.
It does. Oregon and Texas place strict financial ceilings on violations.
How strict?
Oregon charges $500 per violation per day, but they cap the total at $10,000 annually.
Only 10,000?
Yep. And Texas is even more lenient. They charge a daily fine of just $100, plus some unpaid registration fees. But again, the maximum penalty is strictly capped at $10,000 a year.
I have to challenge the logic there.
Yeah.
If I'm running a data brokerage firm clearing $50 million a year in revenue, a $10,000 fine is not a deterrent.
No, not at all.
It is a rounding error. It's literally cheaper to pay the maximum Texas fine on January 1st as an operational tax and then ignore the regulations for the rest of the year than it is to build a fully compliant security infrastructure.
You are identifying the classic legislative tension between consumer protection and fostering a frictionless business environment.
Right.
A capped fine prevents state regulators from bankrupting a company over, say, a minor administrative oversight.
Right.
But as you pointed out, it completely neuters the deterrent effect for massive players.
Exactly.
This is precisely why the uncapped states designed their laws differently.
So how aggressive do the uncapped states get?
Well, Nevada levies a flat $5,000 per violation with no stated annual maximum.
Okay, better.
Connecticut charges a flat $200 per day per violation, indefinitely. But California's penalty structure? It is designed to compound exponentially.
Break down the California math for me.
All right. California charges $200 a day just for failing to register. But the true financial threat is tied directly to that DRP platform.
Oh.
They charge an additional $200 a day for every single deletion request that is not processed.
Wait, every single request?
Yes.
So if the DRP platform sends a broker 5,000 deletion requests and the broker's automated system just breaks down, or they intentionally ignore the batch for a week.
You do the math. 5,000 requests multiplied by $200 multiplied by 7 days. The broker is suddenly facing a $7 million fine for a single week of non-compliance.
A single week? Wow.
The compounding nature of the fine forces immediate systemic compliance. It makes ignoring the law financially lethal.
That is a staggering escalation from Texas's $10,000 cap.
It's a different world.
But the Staus notes single out Vermont as being uniquely stringent. What is the Vermont extreme?
So Vermont doesn't just rely on back-end fines. They require aggressive front-end friction.
Meaning?
First, to even operate as a data broker in Vermont, the company must secure and maintain a $20,000 state bond.
Wait, a literal security deposit held by the state just for the privilege of trading data?
Exactly. But the most rigorous requirement is that Vermont actually forces brokers to conduct due diligence on their clients.
Really?
Yes. A broker cannot simply sell data to the highest bidder anymore.
Okay.
They must maintain written procedures requiring any third party buying the data to identify themselves, explicitly state their intended use for the data, and legally certify they will not use it for alternative purposes.
Oh.
The broker is completely responsible for vetting the buyer.
The logistics of that are immense. It forces the broker to basically act as an investigative body into their own revenue streams. What happens if they fail to do that?
The fines are steep and escalating. Missing a registration deadline starts at $200 a day, and that jumps to $1,000 a day if not corrected within 30 days of discovery.
Yikes.
But crucially, if a broker fails to correct materially incorrect information regarding their data practices, they face a $25,000 civil penalty,
Good grief.
plus an ongoing $1,000 per day fine. Vermont has engineered a high-risk compliance environment from top to bottom.
Okay, this analysis reveals a massive structural dilemma
Definitely.
because we are talking about state-level borders governing a fundamentally borderless product.
Exactly. Data is everywhere.
Data travels at the speed of light. It doesn't, stop at the Texas-New Mexico border for a compliance check.
This is the operational nightmare for data brokers right now.
So how do they actually build their systems? If a broker is headquartered in Texas, where their maximum liability is capped at $10,000,
Right.
but their servers are processing the psychological profiles of Californians and Vermonters whose laws dictate the engineering, do these companies attempt to geofence their databases? Like literally siloing data based on the IP address of the consumer?
Yeah.
Or do they just adopt the highest common denominator?
That is the great debate in compliance architecture right now. Geofencing is technologically complex, and honestly, it's inherently flawed.
Because of VPNs.
Exactly. IP addresses can be masked by VPNs, users travel across state lines all the time, and household data often involves devices registered in completely different states.
Oh, ew.
Identifying with absolute certainty that a data point belongs exclusively to a Texan and not a Californian is just incredibly difficult.
So if geofencing is too leaky, then the only safe operational strategy is to build your entire national infrastructure to satisfy the most aggressive regulators.
Precisely. It is highly likely that states like California, with their compounding to drop fines, and Vermont with their bond and vetting requirements, will accidentally end up writing the privacy laws for the entire country.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it just becomes too legally hazardous for a broker to maintain a low-security Texas server and a high-security California server. They will simply adopt the Vermont vetting standards and the California drop integration nationwide, just to avoid a catastrophic compounding fine.
It is a fascinating paradox. The states with the harshest penalties effectively become the default federal regulators by sheer economic force.
Yeah.
Well, to bring this all together for you,
Uh.
right now, your ability to control the invisible marketplace trading your digital life is dictated by a chaotic zip code lottery.
It really is.
The protections surrounding your biometric data and your psychological inferences shift entirely based on local state legislatures. We want to extend a final thank you to the sponsors who help us decode these shifting landscapes: www.myprivacy.blog and www.compliancehub.wiki.
And I will leave you with a final puzzle to consider, building on that compliance dilemma we just discussed.
Okay.
If the strictest states are essentially forcing national companies to adopt their aggressive rules, at what point do the data brokers themselves lobby the federal government to intervene?
Oh, wow.
We might very soon see the exact companies fighting these regulations actually begging Congress to pass a unified federal privacy law, simply to overwrite the state-by-state chaos and regain operational predictability.
Wow. When the shadow economy asks for a spotlight just to read the rules, you know the system has fundamentally changed. Thank you for exploring this deep dive with us today. Keep a close eye on your data out there.